Good morning and welcome to Advances in Poverty Elimination, a symposium of the Tulane Institute for Innovations in Health Equity, which is a part of the Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. So some of you might be wondering, why is public health doing a symposium on poverty? Well, public health is about understanding risks, understanding health risks. What factors increase risk? Which segments of the population are at greatest risk? How do we intervene to lower risk? What programs can mitigate risk? And today we take on what is perhaps the best documented risk factor for most health conditions, and that is low socioeconomic status or poverty. The approach we take today is a bit different, however, from what we normally do in public health to address this topic, because today we seek to discuss the determinants of the number one health determinant. In other words, what are the risk factors that cause persistent poverty, and how can we intervene to address it? When I became dean in 2018, I pledged that the school would turn its sights more locally to the Mississippi Delta, the Gulf Coast, and New Orleans specifically. And this initiative is part of that vision. New Orleans has one of the highest poverty rates among any city in the United States, and Louisiana is one of the least healthy states. These facts are not unrelated. Poverty is the best documented determinant of health, and it seems unlikely that we will improve the health of our community until we address poverty. So today we'll hear from national and local leaders who are working in various ways to address poverty. Today's symposium was several years in the making. Like most things in the last 2 years, we had a series of fits and starts through pandemics, and hurricanes, and other events happening here in the city. So it feels good today. It feels good today that we are finally here. I'd like to thank specifically a few of the staff who have made this possible. In particular, I want to single out Verna Aquin, Chantrell Shelby, Dee Bowling, and a very special thanks to Dr. Danielle Broussard, who really was the spearhead behind all of this and whose labor is responsible for this event coming together today. But today is also the result of a partnership with an anonymous donor who is concerned about persistent poverty and the toll that it takes on human potential. And we thank the donor for partnering with us to ask the tough questions. So now I turn it over to Dr. Danielle Broussard, who will host the event today. Danielle.
Good morning, and thank you, Dean Levice. So following on what Dean Levice just presented to you, and I'll just tell you about myself. I'm a research assistant professor in the School of Public Health's Department of Social, Behavioral, and Population Sciences. And so Dean Levice provided a nice background on how we got to this point. I want to give a little bit more of our history. So in the year 2020, Dean Levice and I initiated a research study that explored poverty in New Orleans with the goal of understanding what has kept so many New Orleanians, and Black New Orleanians in particular, trapped in the stronghold of poverty. I started working on this by interviewing a diverse cross-section of people to better understand the issue. The people I interviewed included local and national poverty experts, current and former governmental leaders, people in the business and faith communities, public policy experts, community activists, those who represent nonprofit organizations that provide services for low-income families, and most importantly, residents who face current financial instability and those who have lived in poverty. The topics covered in the panel discussions today reflect many of the responses shared by the participants in their assessments of the root causes of poverty in New Orleans, especially for the Black community. Things like discriminatory housing practices, those of the past and those of the present, which are arguably at the core of many of the racial disparities that we see today in education, employment, health, and wealth. Discrimination in the criminal justice system, chronic underinvestments in Black communities and neighborhoods, limited economic and employment opportunities, and an economic base in the city that relies heavily on tourism and other service industry jobs. the undervaluation of labor, and a lack of a living wage, as well as policies that limit the ability of city leaders to make improvements in some of these areas. And I'll just say a full report of our findings is in progress. But ultimately, the purpose of learning about the forces that have created barriers to economic prosperity for Black New Orleanians was to consider solutions to the problem, be it finding ways to enhance existing anti-poverty efforts in the community or identifying successful anti-poverty strategies that are being pursued locally or in other US cities, and considering how those successes might be replicated. So today we have local and national speakers who will not only discuss the issues that foster poverty and limit economic prosperity, but also what can be done and what is being done with degrees of success to remove obstacles to economic well-being and make economic mobility a reality for individuals, for families, and for the entire community. Our hope is that this symposium will inspire future discussions that lead to collaborative approaches and action that not only reduce poverty in the city of New Orleans, but eliminate it altogether. So again, thank you for joining us today. And we'll pause for just a few moments before we move into our first panel, which is focused on addressing systemic and institutional racism. Thank you.